All right, so everybody, thank you very much for attending this morning. Welcome, everybody. This, in case you were wondering, is the Carbon Leadership Forum's NGO Government Roundtable on Embodied Carbon. And we've got the following objectives. We want to share news, strategic plans, resources, and tools related to embodied carbon. We want to report planning and future dates for conferences, webinars, and meetings. Inspire and facilitate ongoing communication and conversation among key leaders related to embodied carbon. And finally, we want to encourage convergence on shared embodied carbon terminology, data standards, benchmarks, and targets for embodied carbon reduction. And I'm Andrew Himes. I'm the Director of Collective Impact for the Carbon Leadership Forum. And we've got a special guest star today, Rochelle Habshi is from our research staff. She's a structural engineer from our research staff here at the Carbon Leadership Forum, and she's going to be reporting on what we at some points in the past have called our wedge report, a look at embodied carbon pathways to 2050 for carbon reduction targets in the United States. And so, Rochelle, would you please go ahead and just introduce yourself just a little bit and then take it away?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Yeah, as Andrew mentioned, I'm Rochelle. I worked on this project, the Embodied Carbon Pathways to 2050 for the United States. I was previously a structural engineer for many, many years and transitioned to Carbon Leadership Forum last year. And this was one of the projects that I worked on. I will share my screen.
I need to let you do that, don't I?
Oh, I think I can share. I can share, yeah. It's
Can
totally,
you? Okay, good.
yeah, yeah. Um, okay. You're gonna see my screen with all the tabs, and that's fine, I think.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, all right, great. Maybe if I do this, will that help? Yeah, a little bit. Okay, all right, so this is the project is called Embodied Carbon Pathways to 2050 for the United States. Colloquially, it's called the Wedge Project, and you'll see in a little bit on the slides why we ended up calling it the Wedge Project. So this project started early last year and is a collaboration between CLF, the UW Life Cycle Lab, and RMI. And just wanted to say thank you to everybody who helped out with this project. Everybody did their part, and it wouldn't have been possible without everybody involved. This project aimed to address three questions, which are diagrammed here. First, where are we headed? Using material intensity and historical material consumption data, we established a business as usual projection for US embodied carbon to 2050. And then second, what trajectory is needed instead to meet global climate targets to keep below 1.5 degrees of warming? And then third, which strategies and policies are most likely to help close the gap between these two trajectories? And as you can see, closing the gap is a bunch of these little wedges, and that's why we called it the Wedge Project. So to answer that, we leverage existing research on industrial and building decarb and demand reduction strategies. And today I'm going to walk through all three areas of research. We're super excited about this work as we're looking for ways to focus our work to move faster together. This slide shows the business as usual projected US embodied carbon for infrastructure on the left, including concrete, asphalt, steel, and sand and gravel, and for buildings on the right. These projections are cradle to grave, focusing on the manufacturing impacts from 30 key construction materials. And unsurprisingly, concrete, which is in orange here, plays a large role, and it makes up about 66% of projected infrastructure emissions and 38% of A1 through A3 emissions for new buildings. Asphalt, steel, insulation, and aluminum also played a large role. RMI led this portion of the analysis, which was downscaling the global carbon budgets established by the IPCC for the US to the US construction sector specifically, and then to specific building types. RMI's analysis includes three different attribution principles to downscale. The red line in each diagram is the benchmark. It's the benchmark ECI for 50th percentile from the CLF benchmarking study and from RMI's low-rise residential benchmarking report to show where we are today compared to these targets. Unsurprisingly, these trajectories emphasize that we need to act urgently to close the gap between a median building and the trajectory we need to stay within global carbon budgets. While that last slide, may look bleak, if you look at these targets against the full range of the projects in our benchmarking study, you can see a slightly more optimistic picture. For multifamily residential, the 1.5 aligned target for 2025 is just above the 25th percentile for projects in the benchmarking study. And for office, there is one or two buildings in our benchmarking data set close to the current target. So it means that there are projects that are meeting these targets today. So it's possible even today, and that's promising. To complete the scenario analysis, we began with mapping specific strategies to each of the 30 materials with specific reduction potential ranges per material. These strategies generally fall into the categories of energy, carbon capture, material substitution, circularity, and material efficient design. We looked at 6 different scenarios that used different assumptions for how optimistic we were about the reduction potential of each strategy we looked at within the range cited in literature, as well as testing different levels of deployment. And while we dug into scenarios that went all in on one specific thing like design, energy, circularity, or R&D, none of these focus areas on its own was enough. Only the best case scenario, which is scenario 2, highlighted in red here, or boxed out in red here, only the best case scenario where all the strategies were employed is enough to get close to targets. And this is what the best case scenario looks like. In both infrastructure, which is on the left, and new buildings on the right, you see a drop associated with rapid adoption of available best practices. And then there are strategies like maxing out SCMs in concrete. These are strategies like maxing out SCMs in concrete, structural system material efficiency and substitution, using better insulation, using clean power in factories that are already powered by electricity, and many, many other strategies that aren't easy to get done, but are technically feasible today. And then around 2045 is when you start to see the impact of emerging technologies scaling. So here's some of the overarching findings. First, scaling best practices now while investing in emerging technologies is incredibly key. As shown on the last slide, we cannot wait for emerging technologies to save us. We have to focus on scaling best practices now. But we also expect some newer technologies to help us close the gap between targets as we approach 2050. Second, a portfolio of strategies is required. There is no silver bullet. So some of the most impactful strategies were cement and clinker substitution in concrete, use of low carbon electricity in steel production, structural design optimization and material substitution, cement kiln energy efficiency and carbon capture and storage. Third, design matters. Like strategies like structural design optimization and material substitution that require changes in design and coordination with architects and engineers offer large near-term gains, and even more is that we already know how to do these things. So we also need to look into more design strategies for infrastructure. All right. So we know this kind of big change does not happen through slow and voluntary only adoption on projects. We need incentives to drive uptake in the short term, and eventually we will need codes, standards, and policies, or this will not come to pass. Policies can help create an environment where these changes on projects are more affordable or better understood, and it is not on individual designers to ask for changes, but rather part of the requirements that buildings or infrastructure owners are bringing to the table from day one. And yeah, so policy is super important. And I think one of the key findings was building level standards are a key complement to industrial regulations. And yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you very much,
I have a
Rochelle.
quick question.
Oh, yeah, quick question. Go ahead, Christoph.
Hello, everybody. Great presentation, Rochelle. I was curious. I saw like on a note on the graph that just like grabbed my mind and had questioning everything else after that. Seemed like it was all based on the product stage. Is it all based on cradle to gate, this analysis? Like if you go back to the where you said there's buildings that are doing this today. Yeah,
Yeah,
right
this,
there.
yeah.
Says embodied carbon intensity A1 to A3.
Yeah.
Is it so that's what this focus was on, cradle to gate?
Um, it was for buildings, yeah, A1 through A3 emissions, yeah.
Okay. And so but when we're saying policy, that's in some other realm, of course. Okay, so I just was checking on that. So it's not looking at construction or use or end of stage, and then phase D is actually, I think, one that's often sadly overlooked. It's probably the most important one.
I
Yeah.
totally agree. And one of the methods was like material circularity. So in that sense, it kind of was somewhat captured. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, but yeah, and also like that kind of gets into like which life cycle are you attributing the circularity to. But yeah, completely agree. One of the findings in the report, which I think we have a graph in the report. It wasn't highlighted in this presentation, but it was just how like the scope of this project, what the findings of this project were, and then how much more scope we
Yeah.
even include in this project, and which is both like daunting and also exciting because there's like so much more potential there. We have a lot to go. So I think that graph that graph is also kind of a wedge graph, and it does show I think the scope of this project and then the much more additional scope that this project didn't even touch. That
Right. Right.
and a part of and a huge part of that portion is the reuse of buildings and circularity in our existing buildings and infrastructure.
Excellent. Yeah. Two more quick comments. One is that from an embodied carbon perspective, A1 to A3 is in fact like where you would start, right? That's where the embodied carbon comes in. So the B phases, that's we have another name for that. That's operational carbon. That's one comment. And the other one is just back last night from the Passive House conference in Milwaukee. And so I'm seeing these projects, things like straw bale sips and hempcrete and really leaning into biogenic materials. And they are coming up out of the ground. And there's nothing that says that like kind of cuts through the lack of motivation, the dauntedness, than seeing buildings exist that are making this happen.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing says you can make this happen better than actually seeing a building.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree. I think in another project that I'm currently working on that kind of there are some parallels with this project, but it's more material specific. I've been interviewing a lot of like industry professionals, and I
Hmm.
think the one of the key findings from the project I'm working on is that we need to like leverage what we can do today, like which is exactly one of the key findings in this report as well. So focus on decarbonizing quickly and fastly and efficiently right now, and with also putting some money towards emerging technologies, but making sure that we don't rely on those as a silver bullet to save us. And then how do we support emerging technologies and how do we make sure that they're successful to scale? And I think scale in bio-based materials is a really important question. I think bio-based materials are great. It's there and there are a lot of examples in buildings that they already exist, especially with like straw bale housing construction. But how do you scale straw bale? And
Hmm.
I think if people really great people that are working on it, like I don't know if you know about the Verdant panel. Like the
Hmm.
Verdant panel is like a really great example of specifically trying to tackle that question of how do you scale straw bale into not just like a one-story residential home. So which is also great. Like we need more one-story residential homes made out of straw bale, but yeah.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, and it's not just biogenics, right? I think that the biggest material we can control that's easy and ready, the technologies are here, is refrigerant use. Get
Yeah.
away from get into hydronic systems and stop using so much refrigerant, and then the whole building is refrigerant agnostic because it just has a hot water supply line, a cold water supply line, and returns. And yeah, so there's a lot of stuff, a lot of really low hanging fruit that are available. But yeah, I'm with you. That silver buckshot. I'm with
Yeah.
you on that.
I like that phrase, silver buckshot. I think I'm going to steal that phrase. I think I'm going
Oh,
to
I didn't create it.
use.
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
questions of
You're brave to mention policy today, though, Rochelle, right? Like, we need better policy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like I don't know if I'm that brave. I feel like policy exists today. Like I think there's like pushback, especially like you see like in California like AB 130 passing and like Calgary not being able to like update its like code cycle. Um but like
I
policy
don't
like
know about
Calgary
AB
exists.
130.
Oh.
What's AB 130? I admit I
Uh,
don't know.
AB 130 was passed in response to like the fires in Los Angeles. Basically, it's stopping all major code updates. I think for the next 6 years. Don't quote me on the number of years, but for
Oh
an
my
amount of
goodness.
time. Yeah.
Oh,
So
perfect.
so so
I'm
for
sarcasm.
yeah, and so for example, like Calgary, which was supposed to get updated in 2026, the embodied carbon requirements were supposed to get updated in 2026. That is currently on hold, and it may change
Yeah,
because
yeah.
nobody is sure exactly how AB 130 affects every single aspect of the code. But for now, it's on hold. So that's what I mean is like there are pushbacks, but there's still a lot of policy that exists. Like City of Vancouver and City of Santa Monica are both like really great examples of pushing like embodied carbon policy at a local level and at a they're large cities. Well, yeah, they're relatively large cities that like care about doing things and are putting pen to paper. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. I have more I'd like to say, but I don't want to steal more of the time.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah.
any other questions of Rochelle from anybody else?
Oh, there was
No.
one question in the chat. Yeah, this included, it said, does this include infrastructure projects that use significantly larger quantities of concrete and steel as compared to residential and commercial construction? Yeah, this included infrastructure projects. Let me go back. So on the left is non-building infrastructure, and that's why you see such a big orange concrete block in the infrastructure portion. And then on the right is the new buildings that we looked at.
Great. Okay. I'm going to move on. If there are any other questions or comments in the chat window, I don't see any. Rochelle, thank you so much for that. That report, by the way, for me personally, it's a combination of two things. On the one hand, it's daunting, like, oh my God, we've got a long ways to go. And on the other hand, it's highly inspirational because if you don't know what your target is and you don't know what you have to do, then you're more likely to do very little or nothing. So this report really should be a wake-up call to the whole bloody industry about the need for a radical shift to focus on embodied carbon as well as part of the larger carbon picture. So thank you very much for that report. That was great. The next person we've got on the agenda is Julie Janiski, who works in her day job for Bureau Happel, but has been since the beginning one of the key figures on the steering committee. First of all, helping to launch the MEP 2040 initiative, and I know that we've got a few other folks from the MEP 2040 steering committee in the meeting as well, including let's see, Paul and I saw, and obviously Christoph, and oh yeah, and there's Nick Peterson right on. So we've got a healthy representation from MVP 2040 this morning. Julie, go ahead and tell us what is up with
Hey, everybody.
with
Good
that
morning.
initiative.
Andrew, is it all right if I share my screen?
Please do.
Great. Give me a holler if everybody can see that, just to
We
make
can see
sure.
you are there.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Beautiful.
So just a reminder on what our mission is, which is very much about collective action and ultimately looking at total carbon emissions associated with building systems. So we've been really, really focused on embodied carbon over the past few years, but the mission is to look at whole life, whole building, carbon. So there's a consideration for both embodied and operational carbon, and looking at how that aligns to the industry. A couple of the things that have been up lately is that we have published a beginner's guide to MEP embodied carbon to help the industry move forward with consistency and consensus around how to tackle this problem and how to measure it so that we can manage it. The other piece of work that we've published, or rather are working on publishing results from and learning from, is this whole life carbon pilot project, which was utilizing the MEP, the beginner's guide to MEP embodied carbon, to be able to map out what whole life carbon actually looks like once you start to include MEP systems with the same level of rigor that we've been using for facade, for structures, et cetera. So the challenge from the Carbon Leadership Forum was the initiative for the MEP 2040 to rally, to become an organization that stepped up to say, we're creating this commitment. And for the signatories that are signing up for the commitment, we're asking that they establish a company plan, request low GWP refrigerants, to Christoph's previous point, request EPDs, and participate in the quarterly MEP 2040 forum to be able to really help generate that collective action around the topic. We're not in a position yet to be asking and collecting data, but we're hoping to get there, again, based on the sort of evolution of what we've been doing in working with the ECHO project, the Beginner's Guide to MEP, and the pilot project, in generating a data set and a way of a methodology to be able to play that out across the industry. The genesis of MEP 2040 looks a little bit like this, where, 4 or 5 years ago, there was very little around relative to building systems. Certifications, we're not thinking about it. CLF materials were minimal, and whole life carbon standards, at least in the US, didn't look at the whole picture. Today, that has shifted. We've published the Beginner's Guide to Embodied Carbon. We've been working on the pilot, and as part of that, published a YouTube series that Kaylee very generously took care of while she was sort of working through the pilot program with everybody. Lead version 5 is picking up refrigerants in the way that they're thinking about whole life carbon. Greenbuild has had sessions, ILFI has had sessions. The zero carbon certification for ILFI now mentions that signatories of the MEP 2040 commitment help sort of satisfy some of their requirements, which is really exciting to see how much we've been able to embed MEP in this space in such a short amount of time. It feels like long and short at the same time. I've got just 2 or 3 more slides, Andrew, if that's okay.
Please, go ahead.
The Beginner's Guide to Embodied Carbon, I won't read all of these notes, but we wanted to make sure it's really clear about what the guide is and what it is not. There were around 15 authors from across the industry that worked together on publishing this guide to be able to help perform quantity takeoffs, and at the same time include just one whole life carbon MEP study in detail as an example of how that methodology is then played out. So if you're interested, definitely download the guide if you haven't yet. It's got an enormous amount of amazing thinking. It's co-published with the CLF, and it does have that one case study in it. And obviously, ideally, there's more case studies to come as we move further down the road. What the guide is not is also on the slide, and it's really important to acknowledge that we're still in early days relative to MEP embodied carbon as part of the whole life carbon picture. And the Pareto principle is essentially this 80-20 idea that we're trying to understand where we can move the needle and not spend as much effort on the small things that are not necessarily moving the needle yet. This is just a snapshot from, this is just a snapshot from that single case study in the Beginner's Guide to Embodied Carbon, showing the whole life carbon story for the Weimer Hall project that was included. What you'll see is that the turquoise, the teal color here is MEP, and you can see that as we move from A1 to A3, to excluding operational carbon here, to then including operational for a whole building, whole life carbon picture, truly of a building, the impact of MEP continues to become even larger. There are lots of caveats to that, so please don't, snap this and run with it without making sure you've got all the caveats to go with it. But it's a really important consideration to understand that the MEP designers of the world have a really, really important opportunity and responsibility to contribute to this future. Last but not least, wanted to share just a snapshot from the whole life carbon pilot of the pilot projects that contributed, which looks like this. So we had a decent number of education and office projects, slightly less lab and airport, and then a sort of one-offs for healthcare, public assembly, residential, and warehouse. And what that means is that we'll be able to start to pull sort of mini trends from education and office, but the other use cases are a little bit are sort of not in the area of statistically significant to be able to pull any trending data from. We're super, super thankful for all of our pilot participants that took the time and effort to contribute to the project, to be able to create this and this really valuable data set that's going to move us forward. So in summary, a big thank you to the MEP 2040 Advisory Committee, the MEP 2040 Steering Committee, to Andrew for his relentless collective action pursuit, and to everybody, who participated in downloading the Embodied Carbon Guide and participated in the pilot program. We're really excited with the next steps to see what we can do with all of that data and continue to generate more, so we can help clarify what the best design strategies are and operational strategies are for reducing carbon.
Fabulous. Julie, congratulations. That was an excellent and
To all of us.
highly condensed report, actually.
Yeah.
So there are two things that I just want to add. Number one, congratulations to the team for the high quality of graphics in publication from MEP 2040 with partnership with the CLF team. And secondly, I just checked in on the database. As of right this minute, there have now been 1,332 downloads of the beginner's guide.
Yay!
It represents over 1,000 companies or organizations. Most overwhelmingly, those are MEP design firms. So there's no doubt that what's being published already is having a significant impact on both the understanding and the imaginations of MEP design firms around the world. So thanks very much for that presentation.
Yeah, thank you for the time to share, and really grateful for everybody's attention. I again couldn't be more grateful for the people that have been engaged in the MEP 2040 initiative and continue to be.
Right. All right, so now actually I'll just pause. Any really quick questions before we move on? And hearing none, Colleen from the Canada GBC, Green Building Council, please take it away. You're on the podium now.
Do you want me to share my screen as well? I can do that. I've just have 3 slides, make it easier.
Yeah, are you able to do that already?
I think so. 1 second. There we go. I think that works. Let me see.
Yes, we got it.
All right, great. Okay, so I wasn't able to attend the last call, so you might have got some of the early updates from CLF BC, who's not on today's call. But in Canada, we did have our second National Embodied Carbon Summit, which is sort of an invite-only event trying to bring stakeholders across the industry together to talk about a sort of a national strategy for embodied carbon in Canada. And we really appreciate some of our Americans coming to our summit, including Carbon Leadership Forum. Megan Lewis came, as well as we had Builders for Climate Action and 2 others. Can't remember the names off the top of my head right now. Let me just see if I can advance these slides. There we go. This information I'm presenting to you is not yet formalized or released, so it's very much potential ideas. But the idea of the summit was to take solutions that we had come up with last year's summit. So in 2024, we met, came up with all these gaps and barriers for a national strategy and came up with 27 solutions. We took the top solutions and wanted to have more focused conversations on them to see how we can move them forward together as an industry. And these are some of from the raw notes and some of the brainstorming that we came up with. We're trying to write right now sort of internal report to participants. The draft right now is the planning committee, and then it'll be going out to the participants, and then we'll release it some way to the wider market. So take this as all of grain of salt. But these are the areas that we want to focus on in Canada to move the needle forward. So some of the ones I just wanted to highlight here at the very top is we want to have a national home building LCA results database. The city of Vancouver would lead that project because they're already doing such great work. It's going to be funded by the NRC. There'd potentially be an advisory group and a stakeholder group with that. But that's one of our areas of interest. There's also been a lot of interest in trying to get the tools to be a bit more aligned in the LCI databases behind them. And this has already been a funded project. We are expecting a report out on this. Anthony Pack was leading this work. And possibly there'd be a second stage to this, and there'd be like an invite-only group sort of moving that forward. Again, this is all just possible. We don't know for sure if it's going to go ahead. A big focus was also harmonize the whole building LCA framework, really building on the great work done by ECHO. But we realized in a lot of reports about where we are at with the harmonized framework, we need to have an organized way of tracking how the policies are moving forward in jurisdictions. How do we keep them in alignment? So that was one of the key interests of some way of tracking, keeping all the groups together, like these quarterly calls. There's also interest in creating a standard. We have a guideline out for Canada, a whole building LCA practitioner guide, which we're trying to point everybody in Canadian industry to. That came out in December last year. But what we need is a standard that formalizes it, sort of like the 240p in the US that's coming. And so there's interest in creating a working group for that as well. Now, everybody knows here, but embodied carbon is planned to be in our 2030 National Building Code. That's been set a while ago, and there's a whole bunch of progress towards that. Not sure what it will look like yet, and we just don't want it to be derailed. But there's a lot of interest in supporting that. And there's already a task group official task group that's working on it, but there's a potential interest for a shadow group that helps to support it, does the research, presents briefs to them to get that work, keep it on track. The other areas were not as much talked about. We have, like interested more in costing data, making sure that's shared. No separate working group for that. And industry mentioned industry awareness. That's 2.1. What you folks have here. How do we share the information between the industry, those who actually are working in embodied carbon and want to keep up to date? And we don't have a formalized way of doing that yet. We have some informal ways. We have influencers like Anthony Pack on LinkedIn who basically follow if you want to know what's happening in Canada. But we don't really have, proper formal structures. So we're trying to figure out, do we have like this, a quarterly call between the industry to share information? Do we have some sort of platform we sort of try to collect it all? And the second thing with industry awareness is we recognize, how do we broaden the tent? How do we reach other people with this information? How do we get our messages out in a coordinated fashion? And so there's interest in having a working group talk about that, bring it together. Professional knowledge and training. We have a college that runs a whole building LCA micro-credential, but we know we need a bit more formalized training in that. It's challenging, don't know how we're going to tackle that one. And then there was a wildcard topic for all the other ideas we can't move forward on. But we're hopefully getting some sort of short analysis of the summit out within the next couple of months and what working groups are going to move forward from it. So since there doesn't seem to be any other Canadians on the call today, I also took the time to sort of list what else is happening that I know of for embodied carbon in Canada. And I'll put these links in the chat afterwards for you folks. There's been some research that's coming out that might be of interest to you. Our National Research Council Canada has just released in July a low carbon concrete materials, current and emerging technologies paper that came out, white paper. And then coming up is a webinar and a report on October 22nd. The Transition Accelerator in Canada got together with like 9 the leading construction companies to focus on the A4 and A5 construction emissions and how do we address those and ways that they can reduce them. So that should be a very interesting report. And the webinar is free. You can sign up for it. And I'll put, as I said, the link will be in the chat. We will probably do another invite National Embodied Carbon Summit next year in Montreal ahead of our CGBC's Building Lasting Change, and that to keep the industry together, keep us moving towards our common goals. And there's a comment about the leading work of City of Vancouver. They are fantastic. We take so much from them. They're amazing folks. Work with them all the time. But just to let you know, they did delay their proposed 10% embodied carbon reduction. So right now they created a 400 kilograms of CO2 per meter squared limit. And you're allowed to do twice the limit because it was just trying to get people to get in the tent, start using it. It was supposed to do a 10% reduction off the 400 limit this year. Because of various things with council, they have delayed that. They've got everything else in place, but they're just demanding more time, getting more people, all the buy-in before they actually put the limits on. So it's still supposed to be coming. It's been approved in principle. It's just not actually rolled out yet. So there's updated information on the website, which I'll again put the link in the chat. And they have because we have a new national practitioner guide, they have removed their old guidelines and they're all pointing towards the national practitioner guide and their associated city addendum. But again, they're leading with all sorts of ideas for leadership credits. And just some of these projects are getting funded. Just to let you know where the money's coming from, there is a National Research Council of Canada platform to decarbonize the construction sector in Canada. So it's you'll see more projects rolling out from them. So I'll may want to earmark that website, but I'll put in the chat and I'll update you in next quarter if we have more information from them. Any questions from Canada? Is there something in the chat? No. Okay.
Nope.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think we're fine. So, Colleen, that was a great list of bright ideas. So I was really happy to see that. And at some point, it would be interesting to have a whole meeting full of those ideas and an open-ended discussion of those. So thank you very much for that presentation. Let's go on now to Maza Tarabi, who is here in Seattle and part of the team at the Life Cycle Lab at the University of Washington, which is, as I think you may all know, a significant partner integrated with the Carbon Leadership Forum. So Maza, what's up with the Life Cycle Lab?
Thank you, Andrew. It's great to be here today and learn about all these great projects. So today I will be sharing a bit about the PodLCA project. I'm really glad that bio-based material came up in the questions, and I have some interesting update about the tool, method, and data sets to incorporate bio-based materials and carbon storing materials in buildings. So today I will be talking about PodLCA project, which we have been working on in the past 3 years at University of Washington. This project is about life cycle assessment for novel carbon absorbing materials. The examples are cutting edge bio-based technologies like algae cement, mushroom and fungi insulations, bamboo, and many more examples. But when we are using these materials, the question is that how do we exactly know if these novel carbon storing materials are low carbon? And how can we assess and measure the stored carbon resulting from using these materials? Well, that's where this project actually comes in. PodLCA, or Parametric Open Data for Life Cycle Assessment, is a multi-year project funded by ARPA-E, which aims to develop new tools, methods, and data sets that facilitate integration of novel carbon storing building materials in buildings, especially in R&D stage when there are a lot of unknowns and it's very difficult to conduct any sort of analysis in very early stages. But also, on the other hand, there is a good room for making high impact decisions. This project includes different life cycle stages. It encompasses cradle to grave, and it provides current and future scenarios for impact assessment. We also account for the impact of time through dynamic radiative forcing. The other analysis that is provided as part of interpretation of the results are advanced sensitivity analysis. This pyramid here shows the hierarchy of the outcomes as a part of PodLCA framework. The yellow part of the pyramid are the different type of tools that we will have hopefully in 2026. And in this pyramid, as we go up, the tools are becoming more user-friendly and accessible. At the top of the tool, we have the web-based tools, which are the most accessible and simplest tools. They are great options if you want to explore or download the data that we have developed, or you want to quickly look up some values or numbers and compare them. The second type of the tools that we are working are the desktop tools, one for materials and one for buildings, and they are very great for people who are using LCA or they are diving deeper into materials and they want to calculate and measure the impact of their bio-based novel materials. At the end, we will also be sharing and releasing our API, which encompass all the data sets that we have developed that will allow users to integrate it in their work and analysis or even the tools. The different type of tools that we have developed in these projects are there to meet the needs of specific group of stakeholders. And all these tools are made possible through the detailed and thorough research over the past 3 years at Lifecycle Lab. Our methods are based on LCA standard, the IPCC, and the literature. The foundation of this research work is shown at the bottom, and I will be also sharing some links to this in the chat later. It is also noteworthy to mention that this project will be open access and open source. So anyone from different group of stakeholders, they can view the source code, they can modify it, or they can use it in their own purpose. Or we can just simply use the data sets or the tools that we have provided. And I think that's it for me. And I wanted at the end to thank the team that we have at Department of Architecture, the School of Environment and Forest Sciences at University of Washington. And please let us know if you would like to be added to the email list for the updates as we release the version 1 in 2026. And you can send a request to my colleague, Ethan Ellingbo, who is working on the communication of this project. Happy to answer any questions if you have, and back to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Masa. And would you please put links to the resources and the information there about how to contact you in the chat window?
Sure.
And then we'll publish that along with the recording of the meeting. That is really, really a great report, really, really interesting. And I've been fascinated to learn about the PodLCA project since its inception. As you said, I think it was, what, three and a half years ago that the very first idea for it, and then the funding came and so on. So it's really, really a remarkable project. Thank you very much, Masa. Any quick questions before we move on? All right, so we're going to move on now. Willie Carlson from WRI, you're up next. And I think you should have the ability to share your screen if you'd like to do that.
I don't have any slides, so I'll just be going off my own notes here.
And then you
but I'll
can
share
put
links
in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Well, thanks, Andrew, and thanks for everybody for presenting on the interesting things that you all are doing. So I'm Willie Carlson from the WRI US industry team. And it's been like 6 months since we've last given updates. So we've had a pretty busy summer full of publications and articles. So in May, my colleague Zach Byram published an article identifying the need and path forward to developing stronger carbon accounting practices in the chemical sector. And then later in the summer, we updated a previously released article explaining carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration for lay audiences, which is important for industrial decarbonization. We also published an article assessing and quantifying the impacts on clean industrial programs and funding as a result of federal action over the past year. And then finally, our team published an article exploring the need for and the methods to achieve industrial decarbonization in a way that centers the needs and considerations of host communities through policy. Aside from articles, the WRI US director, David Wadowski, moderated a panel discussion at New York Climate Week focused on reducing embodied carbon in heavy industries like cement and steel. And I'll share a recording to that event, a link to the recording of that event in the chat. And then aside from that, the WRI US industry team also operates the Forum for International Green Industry, which aims to share knowledge and facilitate coordination on international industrial decarbonization efforts. To do so, we send out a monthly newsletter, and we're also planning new articles, webinars, and other publications over the next few months. So stay tuned for all of that. And yeah, I'll post links to the chat and let me know if you guys have any questions or would like to connect.
Great. So much. Thank you so much, Willie. That was great. And I'll look forward to taking a look at the links when you put them in the chat window there. Before we move on, one of the things that you mentioned, Willie, was the event that you were part of at Climate Week. And that reminds, which was just, what, 2 weeks ago now? And that reminds me that when I was at Climate Week, I sat down at a meeting hosted by Amazon and Ceres focused on decarbonizing cement and concrete and steel. And I turned to the person on my left, and it just happened to be Taylor Linnell, who's also on the call here. Taylor from Built Cold. And Built Cold is, well, it's not an NGO, it's a for-profit company that has a very strongly aligned mission related to the reduction of embodied carbon through public policy. So welcome, Taylor. I'm glad that you're here as well. All right, the next person on our agenda is Irene Dominguez from Bologna, Europa. Please take it away.
Thank you, Andrew. It's nice to be back after a couple of instances that I couldn't show up. So nice to be here with you all. I really love to see what's happening in the US. I am currently based in Brussels and working on European policy. Bologna is a climate NGO, and we do industrial decarbonization topics, and I'm working on the embodied carbon team. We have a couple of interesting updates for the group. So perhaps I can mention that the European Union is working on a methodology to calculate the whole life carbon global warming potential of the new buildings as of 2030. So this is currently under consultation. We will publish our recommendations for this consultation. So once that's out, I can share it with the group. There's also a lot of movement in industrial policy, largely targeting materials, in particular cement and steel, which have been identified as priority areas. And the European Union wants to also develop voluntary low carbon labels for these materials. And yeah, we are tracking those developments. The idea is that this policy, which is called the Industrial Accelerator Act, will be out in November. So there will be news for the next CLF meeting. Last but not least, the European Union is also revising their public procurement directives, which we are looking at because we think that advocating for mandatory sustainability criteria has a huge potential to foster the uptake of low carbon cement and steel in the European Union, in particular cement, because the public sector is such a big buyer. And to that regard, my colleague Marco, who well, he joined recently Bologna, but he is a cement expert, and he published a great report on net zero pathways for the European cement industry. I will share the link in the chat with you. I think it's really worth to have a read. I actually saw so many parallels with the methodology that the embodied carbon for the US market pathways had, especially because we also look at scenarios and which technologies could be used for decarbonization. So I think it's yeah, a good read as well. On the other hand, we are also working on machinery, construction machinery, largely targeting upfront carbon and circularity. But yeah, on the machinery side, there's not a lot moving politically. We are trying to change that, and we are doing a report at the moment looking at the health impacts of the construction industry in Europe in certain targeted cities. Some cities and regions are more advanced than others, but yeah, we are trying to get the ball rolling on this. To that regard, we published a guideline with lessons learned from Oslo, which at the moment, as of 2025, has 100% zero emission construction sites in public works. So there's a lot to be learned from there, and we are continuing our studies on that. And yeah, I think that's about it from my side. Happy to connect with anyone interested in these topics.
Great, thank you so much. And by the way, I just want to mention that if anybody here in this meeting would like to be connected with anybody else here in this meeting, I'll be glad to make an email introduction and connection. So anybody who'd love to follow up individually with Irene or anybody else, just let me know and I'll do the connecting for you. Any questions about Irene's report before we move on? All right, so the next person on the agenda is Victor Olje from RMI, but I just want to pause for a moment and say I've just done a little bit of calculation, highly complex mathematical calculation, and what I'm able to report as a result of my endeavors is that today, this is the 7th anniversary of the very first meeting of the NGO Government Roundtable on Embodied Carbon, and Victor was there along with me and about 12 other people in a room here in Seattle, Washington. It was an historic event, I would say. So I think that the original members of the NGO Roundtable included RMI and International Living Futures Institute, the U.S. Green Building Council, the World Green Building Council, Architecture 2030, maybe that's the New Buildings Institute, and Victor was there representing RMI. And I also saw Victor just a week and a half ago at Climate Week in New York City, where we were both attending an event called Peer. I'm not going to tell you about Peer because I'm fairly confident Victor will. So Victor, congratulations for hanging in there, and you're still here 7 years later.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for keeping this all going. I mean, really the congratulations go to you. So I much appreciate it. And it's nice to kind of be back with this group. I haven't been here for, I don't know, a year or so. Other folks at RMI have been taking it over. So anyway, really great to hear all the updates from everyone. Quite a pleasure. So I will give a few quick updates on RMI, and as other people have said, I'm glad to follow up as desired. Let's see if you guys can see that.
Yep, we can see it.
All right. So a couple updates on projects which have been ongoing. We have been working on getting the ResNet 1550 standard adopted, and it's been going, I guess, as smoothly as any of these things can go. We are now in the process of just closed. We had our second round of public comments. Everything seems to be going fairly smoothly. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this then gets kind of adopted by home energy raters, the HERS system, and gets basically spread throughout any jurisdiction that is using HERS as part of its evaluation of residential construction. So that's very exciting to see embodied carbon becoming part of that evaluation and rating system. I think the final draft, with assuming that there's no major issues, should probably come out in the first quarter of next year. So we'll probably have an opportunity to give an update then, but so far so good. And this is something that Chris Magwood has really been sort of the person pushing forward with this, and the Home Builders Can workshop that he's been putting together. The second idea here is economics of embodied carbon. We put out a report on this, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, was fairly well received, kind of were able to get a lot more interest in the ideas of how cost effective is embodied carbon, where are issues and so forth. And so we decided it was time to do a second version of this. It's in process. It has a lot of the same people working on it that were on the original group. Matt Young-Klaus, Rebecca Esau, others, actually some of the same people that were also working on the wedge report. So that's great. And again, that should hopefully come out in the next 4 months or so. And that's currently getting kind of some peer review. And yeah, if people are interested in it, please contact me and I can point you to where we are on that. The third major piece of sort of ongoing work that we have is this benchmarking study of affordable homes in India. And for those of you who, I don't know, this is a little bit of a larger update for RMI. We have shifted a lot of our work from working in the US, although we still do a lot of work here, to working in India specifically, but also other sort of areas where there's more interest, especially in policy issues, but where we think we can have a large impact in terms of embodied carbon. There's a lot of construction going on and so forth. So that's great. I think the downside is that because, for example, in India, we have such a nascent kind of network there, a lot of the information is hard to gather. So it's hard for us there's a need for more data, more EPDs, more people having those. And once we can kind of start to get this benchmarking study filled out, then that can start to become the basis for a lot of the next steps in terms of thinking more about policy and recommendations and so forth. So pretty straightforward, but a lot of work on the ground. RMI actually has an India office in New Delhi, so we do have feet on the ground there. But still, it's a slog right now. It feels to me kind of like what CLF was doing, 8 years ago or something. So, yeah. Then a couple other things that are happening. We have been very active with CPACE, Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, which now we've had a couple examples of integrating that into basically integrating embodied carbon issues into CPACE, so you can get basically low-cost loans for those low embodied carbon aspects of your project. And there's going to be another workshop coming up soon, 16th, I guess, of October. And we're continuing to sort of push this. There's several states which are looking to get this fairly quickly. And we see this as kind of a really nice kind of toehold on getting it into other sorts of legislation fairly without a lot of sort of back pressure. These are places where CPACE has already been adopted, and this is basically amending that. Home Builders Can, I mentioned, is a kind of it's a ongoing kind of work that is happening within RMI, and we are continuing to sort of not only do workshops and produce publications, but we also want to have additional funding for benchmarking of a residential building study. And again, this sort of ties into addressing some of the opportunities. How big are those opportunities, and how can we start to access those? And as Andrew promised, I'll talk a little bit about peer. And this was really kind of an exciting meeting. We had, I don't know, probably 50 or 60 folks there in this meeting. This is the second year that we've had a meeting at Climate Week, but had many in between. The idea behind peer, the sort of partnership for embodied emissions reductions, is can we can we hear from the industry, from developers, people who are actually doing, constructing buildings today, find out what they need in order to sort of incentivize more low embodied carbon being basically included in their design and construction. So a large part of this has to do with looking at incentives and different ways of accessing capital flows, but it also has to do with metrics. So we're looking at kind of the value of whole life carbon in commercial real estate, how we can kind of think about that similar to some of the other people that are also thinking about this in the industry. So it's kind of understanding kind of the landscape a little bit better and trying to kind of coalesce around some ideas which are more ubiquitous or can be kind of agreed upon. So the carbon ledger piece is huge, trying to get those metrics straight and then being able to kind of monetize it or more value it. And then also sort of this, we discussed book and claim, which is another ongoing piece within RMI, which has to do a lot with environmental attribute certificates and the ability, especially within the concrete industry, can it be done in such a way that can encourage the production of more low embodied carbon materials. So that was kind of the effort that happened there. We're ongoing. It's an effort between Columbia, ULI, RMI, GMA, and Built Buildings Lab. So really a great bunch of folks that have been working on this, and we're just excited to continue to let people know about it and we'll get your feedback on any of that. And then I've got a bunch of links here that I'll just drop into the chat for everyone, but glad to answer questions if you have them.
Great, thank you so much, Victor. And I just realized that I did a little bit of a misreporting on the anniversary. There are actually two anniversaries. The anniversary of the Embodied Carbon or the NGO Government Roundtable is number 6. This is the 6th year since our very first meeting. It's been 7 years since we held the Carbon Smart Building Day in San Francisco as part of the Global Climate Action Summit. And that was the first industry-wide conference organized and hosted by Carbon Leadership Forum, focused on whole life carbon, with a focus on embodied carbon and operational carbon. And that is the meeting that led to the founding of the NGO Roundtable. So it's way back there in the mists of history, but I like to recall where we all came from, where we started, and how we've gotten to where we are. Question, Colleen, you've got a question for Victor.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Victor, for your update. It's been really good. The work you're doing for the benchmarking study for residential buildings, what sizes of multifamily are you looking at?
So we're pretty open, I think. I think we'd like to imagine that they're kind of in the low-rise, 4-story kind of and under sort of size, rather than
Okay.
Whatever, New York City, 30
Yeah,
story
yeah.
building.
I just know that Chris, it's Chris Magwitz, the contact there, and I
Yeah.
know his Builders for Climate Action. They've done a lot of studies for Canada, but they've been single-family duplexes, row houses, and what we found is missing, because we have a lot of work in the 4 stories and up for different buildings with our zero carbon building program and through LEED, is that low-rise 3-story building or stacked townhouses. That seems to be the missing gap for data.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So kind of 1 to 3 story seems to be the.
Yeah. So there's earlier studies in Canada from his group, the Builders for Climate Action, on the single family or row house and stuff. But it's just that low rise, that 3-story building, they're stacked townhouses. That's what seems to be missing the most of.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I think that he would really appreciate information about that and support for that.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be good to know. I'll reach out and talk to him more. Thanks.
Great.
Great, thank you very much. And let's move on now to a new attendee. First-time attendee is Lee Thrasher from the Georgia Ready Mixed Concrete Association. You're down in Atlanta, is that right, Lee?
Yes, I'm just north of Atlanta up in the North Georgia mountains. So,
Right. Well,
yes,
I will actually be in Georgia and in those mountains and nearby those mountains and then down in Atlanta in a week and a half to 2 weeks from now. So maybe we'll find a way to connect. Um, so please, Lee, go right ahead and talk to us about what the GRMCA is up to. And I think specifically the CTAC program. I'll let you define it and explain it.
yes, and thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to our conversation later this afternoon. And I appreciate you working with us to get that rescheduled. My background is in the ready mix concrete industry on the material supply and the ready mix side. And through that work, I'm very active in ASTM and ACI and have been for quite a while that trickle in NRMCA, which trickles down to locally in the Georgia Ready Mix Concrete Association on our technical committee. A few years back, we decided to have a subcommittee to get involved with the CTAC program, which is just simply a mobile app platform that the Colorado Ready Mix Association put together to gather field data about the challenges we face in the industry with acceptance testing for concrete. And different organizations that are ready mix focused across the US have adopted that as a tool to use to then take that data and provide various means of information and change in their local industry. What we decided to do with GRMCA was attach that to our efforts for sustainable design education and how the challenges we face with introducing new materials or new technologies really has this barrier in the industry of the acceptance testing process. It's a challenge we faced in the industry for many decades. If anybody's ever taken a close look at ready mix concrete and acceptance testing and codes and challenges with compressive strength, you know that that's something we faced for many, many years. And we found that the headwinds that have taken place to talk about sustainable design and what challenges or what opportunities exist with novel concrete materials, specifically on the cement side, which is how we gain compressive strength, can also couple with tackling this challenge we face for many, many years on the testing side. Because if we don't solve that part of the industry, the adoption and the implementation of new technologies that impact strength gain are never going to reach their full potential. This scope gap that exists to assign responsibility for the proper care of those acceptance specimens really is a big barrier that in a lot of our presentations and workshops we do, we can demonstrate where we could save easily a 20 to 30% carbon reduction off an existing base mix that's submitted if we just allow things like performance specifications and we have some accountability in the testing process. So we've used that tool of CTAC to gather that data. So we're not just speaking from opinion or anecdotal stories or specific projects. We can aggregate that across the state independently to not really place blame or point fingers at people, but just say, look, this is our current situation. We need to solve this, and here's some steps and things that we are going to present to try to do that. So hopefully we can come back at another time after our conversation this afternoon and get a little bit more in depth with that, Andrew, and look at presenting to you folks how we think we can move forward past that once we define sort of why that challenge exists. Because we want to impact it locally, but if we can do it in a way that can be scaled to translate into other organizations, then it can really make a difference. And so that's starting locally and see if we can impact globally down the road.
Great, thank you so much, Lee. It just strikes me that a lot of what you just said at the very end there, especially, is kind of the core reason why all of us come together to learn from each other and then to leverage key assets and moments of learning and resource development for the entire industry, so that it's not just siloed in one specific place or one specific segment of the industry. Really important. And I got an invitation, or excuse me, I got an introduction to Lee and his partner from Ann Ellis, who's a member of the CLF Board of Directors and has deep experience in the construction industry and especially with concrete. And so we'll explore how we can accelerate and the adoption and utilization of the lessons that you've been able to discern. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you, and I've been very impressed with this group and the presentation so far. It's exciting to see all the great things that are happening. And if I could, even though I'm not presenting today, I will put a link in the chat. If you're not aware, we are having a symposium at ASTM in December on that Sunday, December 7th, to kick off that committee week, entitled, it's a workshop on low carbon concrete, the industry trends and their impact on ASTM cement and concrete standards. We had a workshop 2 years ago about new and emerging technologies and how we can get them adopted into standards at a more rapid pace, because change at ASTM and ACI is often painstakingly slow. So this workshop is to focus on that. How can we make those changes more rapidly? And I'll be speaking to that in that group as well. So I'll put that in the chat in case anyone's happened to be interested and in the Southeast in December. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks a lot, Lee. And I appreciate you putting that in the chat window. We'll make sure that it gets disseminated and published. And then finally, Andrea, you've been very patient this morning. You're the last person on the agenda. Thank you so much for hanging around and making sure that we're going to be able to leverage your contributions. So take it away. Feel free to share your screen if you'd like.
Absolutely. And yes, I'll take you up on the offer.
And I forgot to say you're from Living Future.
I am. I'm from Living Future. I'm happy to do an intro as long as I can figure it out.
All right.
Perfect. Okay. Is everybody able to see my screen? Perfect. Okay, great. And then now can you see it full screen and not all the background? Beautiful. Thank you. I'm Andrea Cooper. I'm the Vice President of Buildings at the International Living Future Institute. I've been with Living Future for about 10 years. And so my current role, I oversee everything from research and program development for our standards, implementation of our standards through the audit process, specifically for buildings. For the past about 2 years, we've been working on an update to our zero carbon program. This work was generously funded by Amazon, Prologis, JLL, JP Morgan Chase, and we also received quite a bit of feedback and support from our MEP, architecture, and consultant partners within our network. So about 3 weeks ago, we formally launched the pilot. And so the pilot is an update to the zero carbon program holistically. So it is an overall update to all requirements within zero carbon. And then the big addition is we've added pathways for existing buildings. So we are acknowledging that the current climate crisis isn't going to be solved by design and operations expectations for new buildings or renovations, that we really need to be talking about our existing building stock as well. And so we are looking to fold existing buildings into our programs and track proven performance for existing buildings, in addition to the work that we've been doing with new construction and renovation over the years. So for those that aren't familiar, the Zero Carbon program, it is a certification program, and it focuses primarily on operational and embodied carbon. So the pilot updates that to include 4 categories. And so with that, we have updated our references and thresholds for embodied carbon and EUI targets. Additionally, so Julie mentioned the MEP 2040 commitment that's referenced in zero carbon. Building up from that, for fugitive refrigerant emissions, we now require more than just a monitoring. We require measurement, reporting, and offset of those emissions. And then in addition, for this pilot, we have added in energy resilience requirements to zero carbon. So those that are familiar with LBC, that does appear in the Living Building Challenge, but we're pulling in the energy resilience expectations at a smaller level, but we're pulling those in to the zero carbon pilot as well. And so with that, this is just a quick description of the typologies that we certify through zero carbon. And so we are adding existing buildings. And the distinction here is that these buildings are not necessarily undergoing significant renovation or upgrade work. They are existing assets that are in operation that we want to start collecting data and working with those building owners. So we've got some pilot eligibility criteria. So there's an expectation that these projects will be working directly with Living Future to share feedback so that we can understand what is influential for them and what is working, what's not. In addition, we need buildings that have been in operation, for existing buildings specifically, buildings that have been in operation for 12 months or more, and that they're able to report their data. Right now, our working timeline is by the end of 2027 for that initial data, and then the final performance data would be due in mid-2029. And so this is a quick, there's a quick 2-page resource if anyone's interested in learning more, or you're welcome to email us at specialprojects@livingfuture.org. And I'm happy to answer any questions that come into that inbox. My team's ready to answer questions that come into that inbox, but we're excited to get this work out into the industry. And I personally am really excited to start working more with existing building teams through Zero Carbon, and in the future, hopefully through our Living Building Challenge framework as well. And Andrew, that's all I have.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Any questions before I make a final comment of my own about Andrea's presentation? Yeah, Christoph, you're muted.
How many more presenters are there? I have a meta comment, if I could hold it back.
Andrea is the final presenter.
Okay.
I have a comment about Andrea's presentation, and then you can do the wrap up, Christoph. How about that? All right. So my comment is, first of all, I'm really excited about what I'm hearing about the Zero Carbon Certification Pilot Program and its evolution, and the increasing focus on embodied carbon throughout the last several years of that pilot program, as well as the addition of fugitive refrigerants. That feels to me like the whole thing just feels great to me. And I just want to make a note that one of the convening organizations of the ECHO project, that is the Embodied Carbon Harmonization and Optimization Project, was Living Future. And that if I'm not mistaken, the pilot program is going to be fully integrated with the ECHO standard schema for reporting embodied carbon data, and that's really exciting as well. Andrea, would you mind just saying a tiny bit about the ECHO project, just so that we don't leave that behind right now?
Sure. I wasn't directly involved in that. It was my colleague, Jessica Bristow, and then Lindsay Baker, our CEO, was involved as well. But Jessica was involved in those conversations so that as a certifying body, like our view on those conversations, we want to move the market forward. It was a push for harmonization and alignment. And our view as a certifying body was to make sure that we are asking for data in a way that is not overburdensome to project teams. So first, there's a harmonization that kind of as certifiers, we should all be asking for data in the same or a similar way, so that project teams aren't spending unnecessary time just to slice and dice it different ways for different certification schemes. So that's absolutely been a goal of ours as well. But how are we collecting this data so that as part of the industry's feedback loop, it can go back out in a consistent way so we can all learn from it? So we're getting apples to apples data, and we're not trying to compare apples to oranges anymore.
Right on. All right, Christoph, be a poet.
Well, just first of all, had I known that it was such an august group, I might not have commented earlier. So I guess it's a good thing I didn't. But with that said, I'll dive in even more. So playing off of what you just said, Andrea, it seems like we need like a meta ECHO project that's more than just the US and more than just data. I mean, if we think about what we all want is engagement, right? Engagement from our communities, from our governments. And reports are so important to galvanize our resolve, but engagement, like engagement ring, right? Engagement really means like a personal and deeply emotional commitment to something. And I think we all know this. What we're working on is arguably the most significant issue facing human society globally. Like we should have the ultimate PR, right? It's, later is too late to protect the people and places we love, right? And so I'm just trying to think about like, how can we Like if we're all horses, how can we harness ourselves together and move this together, but really not necessarily from a science perspective, more from a PR. I mean, PR is almost like got a bad rap because it's, it's used to promote covetousness and materialism and greed, but PR works, that's why these big organizations do it. So I'm trying to think like a PR harmonization project or something. Anyway, that's what comes up for me. Yeah.
Kind of a story alignment.
Yeah, stories are
Yeah.
if someone's going to convince you of something, it's going to be from a story that they connect to, not from a graph. I mean, I'm not trying to berate graphs. I mean, I'm a PE and I'm an MEP engineer. I like graphs, but they're not like, we are no longer at a point where technology is the constraint. It's human resolve.
Right.
And that's an emotional situation.
Right.
Say, fully agree. That came up too at our summit, the positive storytelling and trying to reach the wider industry with those stories. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, could we get like a combined, public messaging group? And I mean, all of our groups have some contribution to that. And
Right.
yeah. I don't know, just what was in my mind. We're all trying to say the same things, and maybe we could get a bigger megaphone if we say it together. And just one last comment. Things like, oh gosh, what was the group? I think it was the Potential Energy Coalition. Did this, like they interviewed like 60,000 people around the world just on messaging, right? And so they say, stop saying carbon emissions. Emissions is too benign. Say carbon pollution, right? Don't say decarbonize, say eliminate pollution, right? Don't say sustainable, say safe and healthy, right? So there's these ways if we simply all agreed to map our language into more effective terminology, that's a huge first step. And there's more. There's a whole list of terms like what has been said and what would be better and more effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would just add that in every apparently just purely technical discussion, it's also a discussion, it's also a storytelling. So Lee Thrasher, when you were talking about concrete, it's a different story that we could tell about the most well-used material that's implemented by humanity to build all of the biggest structures that humanity has ever built, right? And just by altering an assumption about concrete, we can alter the reality of the ways in which buildings contribute in a positive way to humanity, right? So that's a story. It's not just a report on some data.
Correct, absolutely. And one of the phrases we use quite often in our introduction as we get into our presentations is we point out the fact that concrete is the second largest consumed material on the planet other than water. And you think about that and you think about what just a minor change would be impacted, globally for that. It doesn't take a lot to start moving that needle. When you think about, we could capture 15 to 20 to 30% reductions tomorrow if we just update the information and just educate the stakeholders involved. The challenge is the same as it is with developing standards I've dealt with for majority of my career. It is always a regional business, and it always will be. It is a rapidly consumed material that's just in time delivery and all those kind of challenges you have. We can't batch concrete in Atlanta and deliver it to Miami unless we're talking precast pre-stress. But in ready mix, which is the vastly dominant production method for concrete, it is a regional material with regional consumption. So the trickle down effect, the communication challenges, as Christoph pointed out, are huge, because it's not a challenge in the acceptance of the messaging. It's just having the conversation. And that's what we are trying to do, Georgia, is just drive ways to find those terms, find that key area, to drive the conversation, just to get people talking in a particular area that can have the biggest impact. And I don't know if we've solved it or found it, but we're trying. So I look forward to having that engagement with you later. It's exciting. I get passionate talking about concrete. I love it. It's the greatest building material ever invented.
by the way, I'll just mention that 90% of the uses of the word concrete on the internet are metaphorical. And metaphors weigh nothing. They have no carbon footprint by themselves, except in the ways that they're used. So I don't know why I said that. It just seemed to kind of make sense to me. Well, thank you all for being here this morning. This has been a vibrant and healthy and wonderful conversation. I really appreciate all of your participation. And I'll be sending out the notes and a video recording of this meeting to everybody who's on the call, as well as all of those who are on the mailing list for the NGO Roundtable. And I'll be sending out notes for how you can register for the next meeting 3 months hence, which would be January, I think. All right. So y'all have a great day, and I'll talk to you later, Lee.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
That was great. Thank you, everybody.